There are secrets buried so deep, they fester. They twist. They connect in ways you could never imagine. What you're about to hear isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a warning, a chilling tapestry woven from lies. And by the end, you'll understand why some truths are better left undisturbed. Just wait until you hear how it all truly ends. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 38 years old, and for the past 15 years, I've built a life that, from the outside, looked like a perfectly curated dream. A successful architect, I designed not just buildings, but a future. A future with my husband, Marcus. We had the sprawling house in the suburbs, the two perfectly behaved golden retrievers, the annual trips to Tuscany. Our life was a blueprint of success, meticulously drawn, every line seemingly in place. I was the woman who had it all, or so I thought. I was the one who always had the answers, the solutions, the perfectly rational explanation for everything. Until the day the blueprint began to bleed. It started subtly, like a hairline crack in a foundation. Marcus, usually so predictable, began to change. Late nights at the office became more frequent, his excuses more elaborate. "Big project, darling," he'd say, his eyes a little too quick to meet mine. His phone, once left carelessly on the counter, was now a constant appendage, face down, notifications silenced. He'd disappear into the garage for hours, claiming to be working on his vintage car, but the familiar scent of oil and gasoline was often replaced by something floral, something distinctly feminine. I'd catch him staring blankly, a distant look in his eyes, only for him to snap back, feigning exhaustion. The easy laughter we once shared grew strained, replaced by polite smiles and an unsettling quiet. Our conversations became transactional. Bills, schedules, the dogs. The intimacy, the unspoken understanding that had been the bedrock of our marriage, began to erode, grain by painful grain. I told myself it was stress. The economy, his demanding job. Anything but the truth that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. My gut screamed, but my mind, ever the architect of logic, fought back. I was Eleanor Vance. I didn't do paranoia. I didn't do suspicion. I built things solid and true. To suspect Marcus, my rock, my partner for nearly 2 decades, felt like an act of self-sabotage. I'd lie awake at night, replaying conversations, searching for anomalies, for a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Each time, I'd rationalize it away. He was tired. I was tired. We were just in a rut. The self-doubt was a suffocating blanket. Was I becoming one of those wives, consumed by baseless jealousy? The thought disgusted me. I prided myself on my strength, my independence. This gnawing uncertainty felt like a weakness, a betrayal of my own character. I tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, suggested weekend getaways, bought new lingerie. Each effort felt hollow, met with a distracted nod or a perfunctory kiss. The distance between us widened, an invisible chasm that I desperately tried to bridge, unaware that the other side had already crumbled. And then there was Clara Jenkins, my best friend since college. We'd navigated everything together. Bad haircuts, worse boyfriends, career triumphs, family losses. She was the sister I never had, the one who knew my deepest fears and my most ridiculous dreams. Clara was a constant in our lives, a frequent dinner guest, our confidant. She and Marcus had a comfortable, easy rapport, a playful banter that I always found endearing. She'd often joke about being the third wheel, but it was always with a warm, inclusive smile. I trusted her implicitly. She was the one I'd confide in about Marcus's recent changes, seeking her advice, her reassurance. She'd listen patiently, her brow furrowed with concern, offering platitudes about stress and communication. Her empathy felt genuine, her counsel comforting. The irony, the bitter, soul-crushing irony, would later become a physical ache in my chest. She was not just a friend. She was part of the very fabric of my perceived happiness, a happiness she was actively unraveling behind my back. The breaking point wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a series of tiny, almost imperceptible shifts that culminated in an undeniable truth. One Tuesday evening, Marcus claimed he was working late on a bid. But later, as I was scrolling through social media, a mutual acquaintance posted a photo from a new, trendy bar downtown. In the background, blurred but unmistakable, were Marcus and Clara, laughing, their heads close together. It was a fleeting glimpse, easily dismissed by a less suspicious mind, but something in the way their shoulders almost touched, the intimacy of their posture, sent a jolt of ice through me. My rational mind tried to dismiss it. They're friends, they probably ran into each other. But the image, coupled with the floral scent, the guarded phone, the late nights, coalesced into a terrifying mosaic. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next morning, I drove to a discreet electronics store on the other side of town. My hands trembled as I paid for the smallest, most sophisticated hidden camera they had. It felt dirty, invasive, a violation of the trust I still desperately wanted to believe in. But the need for truth, for concrete proof, outweighed my discomfort. I needed to know. I needed to see. Not just for my sanity, but for the very foundation of my life. I carefully installed it in the living room, nestled amongst a collection of antique books, its tiny lens barely visible. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. I was about to confirm my worst fears, or perhaps, just perhaps, finally put them to rest. The first few days, nothing. Just mundane domesticity. Marcus reading the paper, Clara visiting for coffee, discussing work. I started to breathe a sigh of relief, to chide myself for my paranoia. Then, on a Friday afternoon, Marcus called, saying he'd be home late, another urgent meeting. I went about my evening, trying to distract myself, but a restless energy buzzed beneath my skin. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from the camera app. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. The live feed showed Marcus and Clara. They weren't just talking. He was holding her hand, stroking her knuckles with his thumb. Her head was resting on his shoulder. They were laughing, a soft, intimate sound that twisted my insides. Then, he leaned in, and he kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but a lingering, tender kiss that spoke of familiarity, of shared secrets, of a bond that was undeniably romantic. My world tilted. The air left my lungs. It was real. The cracks weren't hairline anymore. They were gaping fissures, tearing through the carefully constructed facade of my life. The betrayal was a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air in my own home. I watched, numb, as they moved closer, their voices dropping to whispers, their bodies intertwining on my sofa in my living room. The screen flickered, and I saw a glimpse of Marcus's face, a look of pure, unadulterated adoration directed at Clara. Not at me. Never at me. Not like that, not anymore. The disbelief was overwhelming, followed by a cold, searing rage. This wasn't just an affair. This was a desecration of everything I held sacred. As I watched the footage, a strange, unsettling detail caught my eye. In the background, on the coffee table, was a file. A manila folder, slightly ajar. It looked like one of Marcus's work files, but something about it felt off. It was too prominent, almost deliberately placed. And then, as Clara shifted, her arm brushed against it, revealing a corner of a document. A logo. It wasn't Marcus's company. It was a logo I vaguely recognized, from a local real estate development firm that had recently been embroiled in a minor scandal. A fleeting thought, a whisper of unease, suggested that this wasn't just about a clandestine affair. There was something else, something colder, more calculated, lurking beneath the surface. The kiss was a dagger, but that file, that brief, unsettling glimpse, felt like a poison, slowly seeping into the very core of my being. It hinted at a deeper, more insidious betrayal, a connection I couldn't yet grasp, but one that promised to unravel far more than just my marriage. The initial shock was a physical force, knocking the wind out of me. I remember sitting there, phone still clutched in my hand, staring at the frozen image of Marcus and Clara, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of the screen. My mind refused to process it. It was like watching a movie, a terrible, low-budget drama where the plot twists were too cliché to be real. But it was real. The numbness that followed was a strange mercy, a protective shell that kept the full weight of the betrayal from crushing me. I went through the motions of the next few days in a haze. I cooked dinner, smiled politely, asked Marcus about his meetings, and listened to Clara's cheerful anecdotes about her day. Each interaction was a performance, a carefully constructed facade to hide the raging inferno within. My heart felt like a bruised fruit, and every breath was a conscious effort. The worst part was the silence. The silence of my own thoughts, screaming in disbelief, and the silence of their deceit, so loud it was deafening. I wanted to scream, to shatter the illusion, to demand answers, but something held me back. A cold, calculating part of me, born from the ashes of my trust, knew that an impulsive outburst would only serve their narrative, not mine. The decision not to confront them immediately wasn't easy. Every fiber of my being screamed for an explosion, for the satisfaction of seeing their faces fall. But the architect in me, the one who planned every detail, who saw the long game, knew better. What would I gain from a messy confrontation? Tears? Lies? More manipulation? No. I needed proof. Irrefutable, undeniable proof that would leave no room for doubt, no escape. My pain began to morph into a steely resolve. This wasn't about vengeance in the heat of the moment. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my narrative. I became a silent observer, a phantom in my own home. The hidden camera, once a tool of desperate suspicion, became my eyes and ears. I set up alerts, meticulously cataloged every interaction, every whispered word, every stolen kiss. I learned how to fast forward through the mundane, how to zoom in on details, how to extract clips. It was a morbid education, a masterclass in betrayal, and I was its unwilling student. Each new piece of evidence, each confirmation of their deceit, chipped away at the last vestiges of my love for Marcus, replacing it with a cold, hard determination. I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was building a case against them, and a case for my own liberation. The footage accumulated rapidly, a damning chronicle of their affair. It wasn't just kisses anymore. It was hushed conversations about their future, about leaving me, about how to manage the fallout. I saw them planning secret rendezvous, discussing alibis, even laughing about my unsuspecting nature. There was one clip, particularly vile, where Clara mimicked my voice, mocking my concern for Marcus's stress. Marcus laughed along, a genuine, unburdened laugh I hadn't heard from him in months. It was a punch to the gut, a reminder that their happiness was built on my misery, their intimacy on my profound betrayal. I saw them discussing finances, Marcus mentioning a joint account, a significant sum of money. He spoke of investing it, but the context, the way Clara's eyes lit up, suggested something far more sinister than a legitimate investment. They were planning a life together, a life funded by our shared assets, a life that was supposed to be mine. The casual cruelty of their actions, the utter disregard for my feelings, fueled my resolve. I wasn't just a wronged wife, I was a victim of a calculated, prolonged deception. And they would pay. Living this double life was a torment. Every morning I'd wake up with a knot of dread in my stomach, knowing I had to face them, to pretend. My work, once my sanctuary, became a distraction I struggled to maintain. My designs, usually so vibrant, felt flat, lifeless. I avoided social gatherings, fearing I'd crack, that the truth would spill out. My friends noticed my withdrawal, my forced smiles. I'd make excuses, stress at work, just tired. The isolation was profound. I couldn't confide in anyone, not even my closest friends, because Clara was intertwined with so many of them. The thought of exposing her, of tearing apart our shared social fabric, was daunting. So I suffered in silence, a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the images playing on a loop in my mind. The weight of their secret, and my own, was suffocating. I lost weight, slept fitfully, and the vibrant woman I once was began to fade, replaced by a hollowed-out version, consumed by a silent war. But within that hollowness, a new strength began to forge itself. A cold, hard resilience. I was no longer just a victim. I was a strategist, a silent warrior preparing for battle. The initial desire for a screaming match, for a dramatic confrontation, had long since faded. It was replaced by something far more potent, a hunger for true justice. What would a public scene achieve? A momentary satisfaction, perhaps, but it wouldn't truly dismantle their carefully constructed world. No, their punishment had to fit the crime. It had to be public, undeniable, and utterly devastating to their carefully cultivated images. I wanted them to feel the same humiliation, the same exposure, the same profound loss that they had inflicted upon me. My revenge wouldn't be impulsive. It would be a masterpiece of calculated retribution. I envisioned the anniversary party, a gathering of all our mutual friends, family, and colleagues. The perfect stage. The thought of their faces, contorted in shock and shame, became my driving force. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about surgical precision. Every piece of footage, every whispered word, every stolen moment would be woven into a narrative of their undoing. I would not just expose their affair. I would expose their true characters, their utter lack of empathy, their profound deceit. This wasn't just about me. It was about setting a precedent. A warning to anyone who dared to play with another's trust. The best revenge, they say, is living well. But sometimes, the best revenge is also ensuring that those who wronged you can no longer live well, at least not in the way they envisioned. I started to subtly test them, to see if they would crack under the slightest pressure. One evening, at dinner, I casually mentioned a new security system I was considering for the house, one with advanced motion detection and recording capabilities. Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. Clara's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. They exchanged a quick, almost imperceptible glance. It was enough. Another time, I accidentally left my phone with the camera app open on the coffee table while they were in the living room. I watched from the kitchen as Clara nervously picked it up, her eyes darting to the screen, before Marcus quickly snatched it away, feigning a need to check the time. Their reactions were subtle, but to my now sharpened senses, they were neon signs flashing their guilt. These small tests confirmed what the camera already showed. They were deeply entrenched in their deception, and they were terrified of being caught. Their fear, their paranoia, became a perverse source of strength for me. I was in control. They just didn't know it yet. Each test, each confirmation, solidified my plan, adding another layer of ice to my resolve. They were walking into a trap, and I was the one setting it. The file I'd glimpsed in the background of the footage continued to nag at me. It wasn't just a random work file. I started paying closer attention to Marcus's conversations, to the names he dropped, to the projects he mentioned. He was spending an unusual amount of time on a new development project, a large commercial complex downtown. He'd always been a meticulous planner, but his recent obsession with this project felt different, almost frantic. And then I saw it again in another clip. Clara, on her phone, scrolling through what looked like architectural renderings. Renderings that bore a striking resemblance to the project Marcus was so engrossed in. Why would Clara, a marketing executive, be looking at detailed architectural plans? It didn't make sense. Unless she wasn't just his mistress. Unless she was involved in something else, something professional, something that connected to that mysterious file. The affair, I realized with a chilling certainty, might just be a smokescreen. A convenient distraction for a dear, more intricate web of deceit. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't just about a broken heart. It was about something far more dangerous. Something that could unravel not just my marriage, but potentially our entire financial future. The pieces were starting to connect, forming a picture far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The air in our living room, usually filled with the comfortable hum of domesticity, was now thick with anticipation, a tension only I could feel. Tonight was our 15th wedding anniversary party. A milestone, a celebration of a life built together, or, as it would soon become, the stage for its spectacular demolition. Every detail was meticulously planned, not by a party planner, but by me, the architect of my own undoing and, ultimately, my liberation. The caterers moved silently, arranging canapes on silver trays. The string quartet tuned their instruments in the corner, their melodies a cruel counterpoint to the storm brewing inside me. Marcus, oblivious, moved through the room, a charming host, his arm casually draped around my waist, his smile a practiced mask. Clara, of course, was there, flitting between guests, her laughter a little too bright, her eyes lingering on Marcus a little too long. She even had the audacity to compliment my dress, a silk gown I'd bought specifically for this evening, a gown that would soon bear witness to her downfall. Our closest friends, family, and even some of Marcus's business associates filled the room, their faces alight with genuine warmth and congratulatory smiles. They were all here, the perfect audience for the performance I was about to unleash. The irony was almost unbearable. They thought they were celebrating love. They were about to witness its brutal, public execution. My heart hammered, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, but my hands were steady as I adjusted the projector, ensuring the screen was perfectly aligned. The screen that would soon broadcast their deepest, darkest secret for all to see. The calm before the storm was deafening. The moment arrived. Marcus raised his glass, his voice resonating with practiced sincerity. "To Eleanor," he began. "My beautiful wife, my partner, my everything. 15 years, and I wouldn't trade a single moment." His words, once a balm, now felt like acid on my tongue. Clara stood beside him, a picture of demure friendship, her eyes downcast, a faint blush on her cheeks. I met his gaze, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, my voice clear, steady. "And to our shared future." I paused, letting the words hang in the air, letting the sentiment settle. Then, with a subtle nod to the technician I'd hired under the guise of anniversary slideshow, I pressed a button on the remote hidden in my palm. The lights dimmed. A collective murmur rippled through the room. The projector whirred to life, casting a bright rectangle onto the screen. The first image appeared, a beautiful, professionally shot photo of Marcus and me on our wedding day, young, hopeful, naive. A wave of nostalgic awe swept through the crowd. Then the image flickered, and the video began. The first clip was short, just a few seconds. Marcus and Clara in our living room, his hand on her knee, her head resting on his shoulder. The murmur turned into a confused hush. Then the next clip, a lingering kiss. A gasp, sharp and collective, cut through the silence. Marcus's face, once beaming, went ashen. Clara's eyes, wide with terror, darted to me, then to the screen. The string quartet faltered, their music dying into an awkward silence. The room was utterly still, save for the soft whir of the projector and the damning whispers of their betrayal. The clips continued, a relentless montage of their deceit. Each stolen glance, each hushed conversation, each intimate touch, played out in agonizing detail for everyone to see. The footage was raw, unedited, capturing the casual cruelty of their affair. There was the clip of Clara mimicking my voice, her laughter echoing through the stunned room. There was Marcus, his face alight with adoration, a look I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The guests, initially confused, now watched in horrified fascination. Their faces mirrored a spectrum of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, profound pity for me. I saw friends turn away from Marcus and Clara, their expressions hardening. Family members, once jovial, now stood rigid, their eyes fixed on the screen, then on the two figures shrinking under the harsh glare of the projector. Marcus tried to move to stop it, but he was frozen, trapped by the sheer audacity of the moment, by the weight of his own guilt. Clara began to sob, soft, pathetic sounds that did nothing to elicit sympathy. My gaze remained fixed on the screen, then on their faces, watching their carefully constructed world crumble around them. There was no denying it, no explaining it away. The evidence was irrefutable, played out in front of everyone who mattered. The humiliation was absolute, a public stripping of their dignity, their reputations, their very identities. And I, the wronged wife, stood calm, collected, a silent sentinel of justice. This wasn't just revenge, it was an exorcism, purging the lies from my life, one damning frame at a time. When the final clip faded to black, the silence in the room was deafening, punctuated only by Clara's ragged sobs. Marcus finally found his voice, a strangled whisper. "Eleanor, I can explain?" I cut him off, my voice clear and resonant, carrying effortlessly through the stunned crowd. "There's nothing to explain, Marcus. The footage speaks for itself." I stepped forward, moving to the center of the room, drawing all eyes to me. My gaze swept across the faces of our friends, our family, the people who had witnessed this profound betrayal. "For 15 years, I began, my voice steady, I built a life with this man. A life based on trust, on loyalty, on a shared vision. What you have just witnessed is the truth of that life, a truth that has been hidden meticulously by the two people I trusted most in this world." I paused, letting the words sink in. Effective immediately, I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I am filing for divorce. This marriage, this partnership, is irrevocably broken. And as for you, Clara," I turned my gaze to her, her face blotchy with tears, "I hope you find happiness in the ruins you've helped create." There was no anger in my voice, only a cold, resolute finality. It was not a plea for sympathy, but a declaration of independence, a reclaiming of my power. The gasps and murmurs that followed were a testament to the shock, but also, I hoped, to a dawning understanding. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor, and I was walking away, head held high, leaving them to drown in the shame they had so richly earned. The room erupted, not in shouts, but in a cacophony of hushed conversations, angry whispers, and the shuffling of feet. Friends rushed to my side, their faces a mixture of horror and fierce protectiveness. My sister, Sarah, was the first to reach me, pulling me into a tight embrace, her eyes blazing with fury as she glared at Marcus and Clara. I saw Marcus's business associates exchanging grim glances, their faces already calculating the professional fallout. Clara's sobs grew louder, more desperate, but no one moved to comfort her. She was a pariah, exposed and ostracized. Marcus, still rooted to the spot, finally found his legs, stumbling towards me, his hand outstretched. "Eleanor, please, let's talk about this privately." His voice was a desperate plea, but it was too late. The private had become devastatingly public. "There's nothing left to talk about, Marcus," I said, pulling away from his touch. "You made your choices. Now, live with the consequences." I watched as several guests, unable to bear the awkwardness, began to quietly slip out. Others, however, remained, forming a protective circle around me, their silent support a balm to my wounded soul. The party, once a symbol of our enduring love, had become a funeral for our marriage, and Marcus and Clara were the chief mourners, left alone in the wreckage of their own making. The air was thick with unspoken judgments, with the weight of shattered illusions. And through it all, I felt a strange sense of calm, a quiet triumph. The truth, finally, was out. As I was being led away by my sister through the stunned crowd, I caught a glimpse of something that sent a fresh jolt through me, a cold wave that had nothing to do with Marcus or Clara. It was a fleeting image, a face in the crowd. Mr. Henderson, one of Marcus's most influential business partners, a man known for his ruthless dealings and impeccable reputation. He wasn't looking at Marcus or Clara with shock or disgust, like everyone else. He was looking at the screen, specifically at the last few frames of the video, with an expression that was disturbingly unreadable. Not anger, not surprise, but something akin to calculation. And then, as the screen went black, I remembered the file. The manila folder I'd seen in the background of one of the early clips, the one with the real estate development firm's logo. It had been a fleeting thought then, dismissed amidst the overwhelming pain of the affair. But now, seeing Henderson's face, a connection sparked. Henderson's firm was the one embroiled in that minor scandal, the one Marcus had been spending so much time on. Was it possible? Was this affair, this public spectacle, somehow connected to something larger? Something more insidious than just a personal betrayal. The thought was a chilling whisper, a new layer of deceit, unfolding beneath the surface of the one I had just exposed. The revenge felt satisfying, yes, but this new, unsettling detail hinted that the story was far from over, that the true depths of their deception, and perhaps others, were yet to be fully revealed. The anger I felt towards Marcus and Clara was now tinged with a growing unease, a premonition of a darker truth waiting to be unearthed. This was just the first domino. The days following the anniversary party were a blur of legal consultations, sympathetic phone calls, and the quiet, almost reverent support of my true friends and family. Marcus and Clara became instant pariahs. His business suffered immediate and severe repercussions. Clients pulled out, partnerships dissolved. Clara, too, found herself ostracized, her carefully cultivated social circle crumbling. The public humiliation I had orchestrated was swift and absolute. But even as I watched their world implode, a strange emptiness lingered. The initial surge of triumph had faded, replaced by the daunting reality of rebuilding. The divorce proceedings were messy, as expected, but with the irrefutable video evidence, my legal team had a clear advantage. I fought for every penny, not out of greed, but out of a fierce determination to reclaim what was rightfully mine, to ensure they were left with nothing but the consequences of their actions. The house, once a symbol of our shared life, now felt tainted. I put it on the market, eager to shed every last vestige of a past that had become a lie. The process was painful, a constant reminder of the betrayal, but each step forward, no matter how small, felt like a victory. I was shedding the old skin, preparing for a new beginning. Healing wasn't a linear path. It was a winding road with unexpected detours into grief, anger, and profound sadness. But I was determined not to let their actions define me. I started therapy, a space where I could unpack the trauma, the betrayal, the shattered trust. I reconnected with passions I had neglected: painting, hiking, exploring new cities. My work, once a source of distraction, became a canvas for my renewed focus. I poured my energy into new projects, designing spaces that felt open, honest, and resilient. I joined a women's support group, finding solace and strength in shared experiences. I learned to trust my instincts again, to listen to that quiet voice within that had tried to warn me. I started exercising, feeling the strength return to my body, mirroring the strength I was rebuilding within my spirit. The weight I had lost was replaced by a newfound lightness, a sense of liberation. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't just about their downfall. It was about my ascent. It was about proving to myself and to the world that I was more than just a wronged wife. I was Eleanor Vance, architect of my own destiny, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. As I began to sort through Marcus's old files, preparing for the sale of the house, I stumbled upon a hidden compartment in his study desk. Inside, nestled beneath old blueprints, was a ledger. Not a typical business ledger, but a meticulously kept record of payments, dates, and cryptic codes. My architect's eye for detail immediately recognized patterns. And then I saw it. The logo. The same real estate development firm I'd glimpsed on the file in the background of the hidden camera footage. The same firm Mr. Henderson was involved with. My blood ran cold. The ledger detailed a series of illicit transactions, kickbacks, and money laundering schemes connected to the very development project Marcus had been so obsessed with. And Clara's name was there too, not just as a recipient of funds, but as an active participant, her initials next to significant sums. The affair, I realized with a sickening lurch, was a smokescreen. A brilliant, cruel distraction. While I was consumed by their personal betrayal, they were orchestrating a far grander, far more illegal scheme. The anniversary party, the public exposure, it had all played perfectly into their hands. While everyone was focused on the scandal, the real crime, the financial fraud, was being quietly covered up, the paper trail meticulously erased. Marcus hadn't been working late on big projects. He'd been laundering money. Clara hadn't just been his mistress. She was his accomplice, a key player in a criminal enterprise. The depth of their deception was staggering, far beyond a simple affair. This wasn't just about a broken heart. It was about a broken law, a calculated conspiracy that had used my emotional devastation as its ultimate shield. Suddenly, all the subtle hints, the fleeting moments of unease, coalesced into a terrifyingly clear picture. The way Marcus's phone was always guarded? Not just hiding texts from Clara, but coordinating illicit transactions. Clara's sudden interest in architectural renderings? She wasn't just admiring designs. She was studying the blueprints for their next fraudulent venture. Mr. Henderson's unreadable expression at the party? He wasn't shocked by the affair. He was calculating the damage control, ensuring the real secret remained buried. The joint account Marcus had mentioned to Clara in the footage? It wasn't for their future together. It was a slush fund for their illegal activities. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying precision. The affair was a performance, a carefully choreographed drama designed to distract me, to make me focus on the emotional betrayal while they executed their financial heist. My public revenge, while satisfying in its own right, had inadvertently served their purpose, diverting attention from the true crime. They had used my pain, my humiliation, as a smokescreen. The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. I had been a pawn in a much larger, much darker game. My initial triumph felt hollow, replaced by a cold, simmering rage at their audacity, their manipulative genius. They hadn't just cheated on me. They had used me, exploited my trust, and turned my life into a stage for their criminal enterprise. But now, I had the ledger. I had the proof. And this time, my revenge would be far more devastating, far more permanent. I closed the ledger, the leather cover feeling cold beneath my fingertips. The silence in the empty house was profound, heavy with the weight of newly discovered truths. My heart, once broken, now beat with a chilling resolve. They thought they had won. They thought they had gotten away with it. But they had underestimated me. They had underestimated the architect. And they had forgotten one crucial detail. I always finish what I start. And some secrets once unearthed refuse to stay buried. They fester. They twist. And they will always, always find their way back to the surface. Because the real game, the one they never saw coming, has only just begun. And this time, there will be no escape. Not for them. Not for anyone involved. The blueprint for their destruction is now complete, and I'm ready to build.